Harris, President and CEO of NYSERDA. It's great to see everyone again here at our Climate Action Council meeting. So certainly we particularly welcome members of the public who have joined us here and in New York City. I will note between now and the end of the year, we are anticipating an increase in public attendance. So we certainly do want to accommodate everyone. I'll say our future meetings will be held at a space that will have more seating for the public through, from that point through the end of the year. So please stay tuned as we will need to change our venues accordingly. So certainly today, in-person Climate Action Council members will be participating in the meeting here in Albany or in New York City, and the public is able to view the meeting both in these locations as well as via webinar to enable broader access to the meeting across the state. And as per open meeting law and adopted by the Climate Action Council through resolution, there is an option for virtual participation for members with extraordinary circumstances who could not join in person at either location. So with that, I'll hand it over to Jenny Cox from Cadmus to walk us through the procedures for today's meeting before we dive into the agenda. Jenny?
Thank you, Co-Chair Harris. So that we have another smooth and productive meeting, I'm just reminding the council members in our 2 locations of our logistics and procedures for today's meetings. We will ask the location to remain on mute if no one is speaking so we can limit any background noise. We will also monitor these locations and folks online to ensure they are muted. If a council member would like to speak, they can raise their hand or stand their placard on the end, and the co-chairs will make note of it. Co-chairs will call on members in order, starting in one room, then move to the other room, and then call on members in order that they raise their hand. Also, for the benefit of the public observing via webinar, we ask that you please state your name before speaking throughout the meeting. This applies to all speakers at today's meeting. And to improve audio quality, we ask the speakers in the Albany location to try and project their voices towards the ceiling mounted microphones. And as a reminder, members participating remotely must be on video and their first and last name must appear on their video conferencing screen. And with that, I'll hand it off over to Co-Chair Harris.
Thank you, Jenny. And let's turn to identifying members of the council who are here in attendance. I'll start with the members in Albany. Please state your name. And then we'll go to the New York City location.
Good afternoon, everyone. Basil Sagos.
Good afternoon. Keisha Santiago Martinez, representing Secretary Rodriguez.
Hi, everyone. Donna DeCarolis, National Fuel Gas.
Gavin Donahue, Independent Power Producers of New York.
Hello, Ann Reynolds, the Alliance for Clean Energy, New York.
Good afternoon, Bob Howarth from Cornell University.
Hi, Peter Iwanowitz.
Good afternoon, Brian Steinmuller, representing Commissioner Richard Ball from the New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets.
Thank you. That's everyone in Albany. Can I ask the New York City location to unmute, and will the members in New York City please state their names? New York City? I'll just note we are not able to hear New York City if you are trying to speak. All right, we're going to have to pause just a second because I do need to.
I just pressed this button. Does that work now, Joe?
Well done.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
It's a red button. I was a little worried, but
Push the red button.
a hero walks among us.
Start over.
Mario Salento, New York State AFL-CIO.
Tom Falcone, LIPA.
Ian Wells on behalf of Commissioner Hope Knight, Empire State Development.
Rory Christian, Public Service Commission.
Raya Salter.
Paul Shepson, Stony Brook University.
Thank you. I do note that we have a quorum for the meeting, And now we've established a quorum, I'll ask the members participating virtually to state their names. I'll start with Dennis Elsenbeck.
Dennis Elsenbeck, sorry, I'm not there.
Thank you, Dennis. Rose Harvey, are you on?
I am. I'm here. Sorry, I'm not here in person.
Thank you, Rose. And Roberta Reardon, Commissioner Reardon, are you on?
Yes, Commissioner Reardon from the DOL. Sorry to be remote.
Thank you. And Justin Driscoll?
Yes, Justin Driscoll here, New York Power Authority.
Thank you, Justin. Anyone that we missed in the roll call? Great. Well, thank you all for being here again. If we turn to the next slide.
Hey, Doreen, sorry, this is Peter Iwanowitz. I just have a quick question before we jump in. You mentioned that we were going to move to a different location. Would that be locations plural, so there'd be one upstate, one downstate for future meetings, or just one location?
So I believe at the moment the team is, I'll look at Sarah, planning on a location in the Albany area to start with because of the fact that we can find accommodations for more people. And we're seeing value in the council also being present in one location for those same reasons. Is that, that's correct?
All right, thanks for that.
So it is great to see everyone again. Specifically, as you see, the agenda today includes what we would typically cover, but also I want to note that staff from the New York State Department of State will be joining us to describe the code adoption process steps and timeline, and to answer questions from the Climate Action Council, given some specific questions that seem to have emerged after last meeting's presentation on topics related to code adoption. So that will be our first major item, and then we'll receive another update from our analytic team on the ongoing work of the integration analysis. And we'll continue to discuss feedback on the draft scoping plan from the public comments and feedback from various topics and sectors, as you see here, electricity and climate justice. And finally, we'll wrap up with next steps. So it's a full agenda as usual. Let's get started. Basil, can you handle the consideration of the meeting minutes from September 29th and October 13th, please?
I would be happy to. Are there any questions or comments? You all received the minutes from the last two meetings. Bob?
On the, not the September one, but for the last meeting, at the bottom of page 9, the last paragraph where there's a staff recommendation on the postponing of the start of prohibition on fossil fuels. After that presentation, I tried, I was remote, but I did my best to express some concern and disappointment with that, and I appreciate if the minutes could reflect that.
Okay.
Not at the moment.
Okay. We can work something in.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions or comments about the last two meetings? With Bob's addition, go ahead.
Basil, sorry, this is Dennis Elsenbeck. Just on the October 13 minutes, on the top of page 4, the end of the paragraph, it actually should say less restrictive building codes, not more restrictive building codes.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll capture that comment in addition to Bob's. So with those two changes, we can look to approve the minutes. Can I have a motion? Okay. Second? Second. Okay. All in favor, please raise your hands. Aye. State your name. Anyone opposed? New York City? Okay. Looks like we have approval. Thank you all. All right. So now we'll just quickly transition into some remarks and reflections. Are we going to kick it off?
Certainly. If we move forward to slide 6, even though it's only been a couple of weeks, there's been a few that we have wanted to highlight. First, the fact that NYSERDA has awarded over $1.2 million in joint funding for a model energy efficiency project at Steamboat Square, which is an Albany Housing Authority residential complex in the South End neighborhood of Albany. This funding in specific will support the purchase and installation of geothermal heat pump systems and other efficiency upgrades, including exterior wall and roof insulation, air sealing, and installation of thermostats and energy recovery ventilation. Certainly a model, including a model of the cost savings and environmental benefits associated with what is a topic we've been talking a lot about, how to retrofit large multifamily buildings in disadvantaged communities with a rigorous state-of-the-art energy-saving measure. So that was certainly an exciting announcement just from last week. And prior to that, NYSERDA and National Grid announced 21 community solar projects totaling more than 120 megawatts that have been selected as part of the first round of a community solar program that delivers the benefits of clean energy to underserved New Yorkers. Once fully implemented, the expanded Solar for All program will serve nearly 175,000 income-eligible customers in National Grid's upstate service areas. Over to you, Basil.
Thanks. Just three quick ones from me. Climate Justice Working Group, as you all know, has been holding in-person meetings now. We had locations in Albany, New York City, North Country, Utica, Rochester, and Buffalo. We look forward to continuing that work. Governor Hochul also with Ag and Markets announced $13 million to protect clean water around the state with farmers, of course, being on the front lines, as we all know from our work with the great Richard Ball. And last week, EPA announced that New York will be receiving $207 million in clean water funding through the bill. So that's some great progress on the federal side to address a clear adaptation issue for us. Doreen.
Thank you. And looking at the photos, I have to acknowledge Commissioner Dominguez has joined us. Welcome, Commissioner. And thank you for joining me at a fantastic announcement focusing on offshore wind workforce development in Suffolk County with the governor last week as well. So certainly some exciting announcements to review at your leisure. But if we turn to the next slide, I will really kick off the very first item and an update specifically with respect to code adoption. So at our last meeting, we reviewed possible revisions to the buildings chapter of the scoping plan, including to the strategy of zero emission codes for new construction. And just to remind all of you, the proposed changes included a text revision to read, adopt state codes that prohibit building systems or equipment used for the combustion of fossil fuels in new construction statewide. And the suggestion was to adjust the dates that this proposed code would become effective by 1 year to 2025 for low-rise residential buildings and to 2028 for multifamily buildings with 4 or more stories and for commercial buildings as well. So we have since fielded questions and concerns from a number of individuals and groups around these possible changes to the strategy, description, and dates, and wanted to provide some additional context for that recommendation and provide more time for questions and dialogue as needed. So to kick this off, we've actually asked several staff from the Department of State to give a short presentation on the code adoption process. And I've asked staff from NYSERDA, who have been supporting this policy development process, to help field questions as well. So to kick it off, I'll turn it over to Matthew Tebow and John Addario from the Department of State to walk us through the next few slides, and then we'll open it up for council member questions thereafter. So Matt, over to you.
Thank you, Co-Chair. My name is Matt Tebow. I'm a Deputy Secretary of State and the designated chair of the State Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code Council. As you noted, I have with me today John Addario. He is the Director of the Division of Building Standards and Codes at the Department of State. So I'm gonna do this presentation, and John's gonna add color as we go through. I think we should probably start from the same basis of knowledge. So I'm just going to take us through some, basic facts, and then we'll work into the timeline. The Code Council is a statutory body that's responsible for updating the New York codes. The council is made up of 17 members, including representatives of the state and local governments and experts from many of the professions that touch the codes. The council begins its process with the model codes that are prepared by the International Code Council, or ICC, and it modifies them to meet the needs of New York. The ICC updates its codes on a 3-year cycle using input from, I think it's 49 states at this point and a number of countries that use the code. They are currently working on the 2024 model codes, and those are expected, as I will note later in this presentation, next year in full language form. Currently, we are using the 2020 New York codes, and those are based on the 2018 model codes. Typically, it takes the Code Council about 3 to 4 years after receiving the model codes to modify them and to adopt them. Given that we already had the 2021 model code language at the time we adopted the 2024 the 2020 New York codes, we were able to incorporate a number of provisions. So actually right now we have a bit of a hybrid between the 2018 and the 2021. Okay, moving into sort of schedule and where we are. In late 2021 and early 2022, the Code Council met and determined that they had a unique opportunity here, that they could jump the 2021 model codes because of what I pointed out just a second ago, because we already have a number of the important provisions already included, and we could move right to the 2024 codes with only a loss of about 3 to 6 months in development time. If we had started the 21 codes at that point, we probably still would not have finished until mid-2024. So we're only losing a little time. We believe right now our schedule, we can be done at the end of 2024. Working together, the Code Council and the Division of Building Standards and Codes has redefined and redesigned the review and adoption process to meet this unique challenge, this ability to jump ahead. We looked at all of our processes. We found ways to cull the time frames down, and we've actually adopted some new software that will allow us to directly modify the language of ICC's copyrighted material without going back and forth with ICC, and that significantly pared down the timeline for this adoption. The schedule for adoption, like I said, currently ends in late 2024. Statute requires a short period between the adoption and the actual go live of the codes. That's for a number of good reasons, including training of the code enforcers. So we aim to have them in use. It will likely be in very early 2025, hence the co-chair's suggestion. The adoption schedule, I just want to be very clear with the members, the adoption schedule is extremely tight with a number of work streams that now have to run concurrently and a number of dependencies since our process is now tied so closely with ICC's. Literally, we are working on the same time frame as the ICC. In fact, we're really only about 9 months behind them right now, whereas normally we would be 3 years behind them. On the DOS side, so starting from right now, on the DOS side, we've begun working on a contract with ICC. That's the first step in the process to use their copyright model codes. We must also identify all the reference standards that will be used to negotiate for their use as well. NYSERDA, meanwhile, has to adopt a life cycle cost regulation to replace the 10-year payback provision that was removed from statutes in June. This in turn is going to allow for much, much greater modification of the energy code. And all of that needs to conclude in early 2023. We expect to begin receiving the actual 2024 model code language from ICC in March, maybe early April, and have it, all the books, there are, when you count them all together, there's about 10 books, building code, residential code, energy code, et cetera. We expect to have them all by about September 2023. During that period, staff is going to be overloaded. They're going to race to take the current New York codes, overlay the 2024 as they're getting them, and then make about 600 to 1,000 New York changes. This includes pieces of New York stretch and other recommendations that this body will make. And that will go to the council for review and potential approval. It's important to note right there, actually, a point to be made there, that the code council as a body is the group that actually updates the code. So have to have, of the 17 people, we have to have 9 votes for any measure as we move through. At this time, the members have approved the 2024 model codes as the base, and they've engaged in about 10 working group sessions to look at individual changes as we're seeing them come from ICC. Again, this is a bit of a new process, and it's meant to make us move much faster. But you know, we are literally in lockstep with ICC as they're feeding us materials. The council itself meets 4 times a year: March, June, September, and December, with member review of materials going on in between. So they are going to be very busy, mostly looking at the differences between the 2020 New York codes and the 2024 model codes as they come, and then also the 600 to 1,000 New York changes that will be made over the next 2 years. So I can see that we've moved the slide forward. We can probably move it forward one more. I want to, and that will give us the SAPA slide. So the next thing that I have to note for you is that this is a rulemaking, so it has to go through the SAPA process. And the SAPA process, that State Administrative Procedure Act, for anybody that doesn't know, I'm sure everybody probably does, that process is set forth in statute, and it does have both statutory timelines and requirements. So to summarize this slide, which has far greater detail, I'll just say this. We will begin about a year from now, hopefully, if everything goes according to plan, with a notice of rule and development period. That will take us into early 2024. That is a time when we seek basically informal comments from the public before we go into the formal notice of proposed rulemaking. And then we move into the notice of proposed rulemaking that comes with it a mandatory 60-day period of public comment. It has will be hearings around the state, and lots of time for both public input as well as for assessment of that input and potential changes. If we do make major changes, that moves us into a revised rulemaking period, which also comes with statutory time for public comment and assessment. And then towards about September, I think is what we're aiming towards right now, of 2024, we would be looking to adopt the codes in full and pushing us to the end of that year or the beginning of 2025 as the actual codes being used in the municipalities around the state. So really quick overview there, but I was asked to be relatively quick. One more point that I think is important to make for the council. This is going to be likely the most significant change to the codes made since we moved into the model code structure in 2003. And so we'll likely require a state environmental quality review under seeker, and that will run concurrently with that SAPA period, but will likely take a year as well. So very, very busy, very, 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 very tight process. And so just noting that. The Code Council itself luckily has an excellent support team with the Division of Building Standards and Codes, which is supplemented by several teams from NYSERDA on the energy code side, everyone's working hand in glove and to move this process as absolutely quickly as possible. But as I pointed out, it's obviously a pretty huge body of work. I think that basically concludes my overview, Co-Chair. I thank you, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Matt and John, of course, for joining the meeting. And I do want to note, before we turn this over to questions from the members, I've asked NYSERDA Suzanne DeRoche, Vice President for Clean and Resilient Buildings, as well as Vanessa Ulmer, who leads our policy development team, and from whom you heard at the last meeting on this proposal. So I'd like to open up for questions, and certainly my co-chair and I will help facilitate this dialogue as well. So why don't we start, for a change, let's start in the New York City office, where I know a number of colleagues are located. Are there questions for any of us or comments from the members in New York City? Okay, I'm not hearing any questions. Oh, there we go. New York?
Okay. Joe's got it.
I think we were just going to say we don't have any questions.
Okay, perfect.
All said.
Perfect. I will, if anything comes up, certainly let me know. And here in Albany, I see Bob Howarth has his card up. We'll start with Bob, and then Gavin, and then Peter.
Okay, thank you. One question and then perhaps a comment. Let me just put the question up quickly and then a comment, and then we can get a reply to it. We're focusing here on the change in the timing of it, which I understand. It's my understanding also that there's a change in the definition of what a low-rise building is in terms of number of floors relative to our draft implementation plan. It went from, if I remember correctly, 4 stories or less to 3 stories or less. And so I'm wondering what drives that logic is the question. My comment is I understand the complexity of changing the code, and I understand the desirability of sticking with the ICCC and the need to stick with their 3-year cycle. And I appreciate that you're trying very hard to move faster than usual on that. On the other hand, we spent a lot of time on the council discussing this last year and the year before, and the panel that gave us the recommendation, before we put it into the draft scoping plan. It was passed unanimously by us last December. And I feel we should take that seriously. That was part of the draft plan that went out for public comment. I think there's a huge amount of public support for it. I would make a couple of points. One is that gas stoves, we now know, pose a significant public health hazard to those who cook using them. And the sooner we change that code to get gas stoves out of kitchens, the better. I feel there's real urgency in that. I also think there's urgency in climate. And I think the draft scoping plan that we produced had the appropriate level of urgency. I think stepping back from that sends the wrong signal. Now, it may be that the code process can't work any faster than that. That should not stop us from recommending that this is what we think should be done. And of course, it could also be done by legislative action. So I strongly support not changing the time frame, and if I could get an answer on the change in the definition of low-rise buildings, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. I guess I would ask Vanessa or Suzanne, did you want to speak on the topic of the low-rise buildings first?
Yeah, I'd be happy to speak to that, Doreen, because I think that perhaps just inadvertent wordsmithing. So the proposal still aligns with the state energy code definitions. So the proposed approach differentiates between, on the one hand, residential buildings with 3 stories or less, where the residential energy code applies. And that's what we've been referring to as low-rise residential buildings. And then the second category is multifamily buildings with 4 or more stories and commercial buildings where the commercial energy code applies. Last meeting, I spoke to the second category as multifamily buildings with more than 3 stories, but that was, just, I think it wasn't as clear, but it's consistently multifamily buildings with 4 or more stories where the commercial energy code applies. And so we've also kind of consistently recommended some phasing of code requirements in the scoping plan that would give larger buildings additional time to comply with an effectively zero emission standard, given the more complex building systems and the longer design, permitting, and construction timeline necessary for larger buildings. But as proposed in the scoping plan and also now required in the New York State Advanced Building Codes and Standard Act of 2022, and as Matt spoke to, the next code cycle, the Code Council will use its best efforts to adopt highly efficient state energy code for both residential and commercial new construction. And this is expected to achieve energy savings that are greater than the latest national model codes. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Bob. And then as to sort of the means by which these changes could be implemented, I would put this certainly in the category of several items where we're really going to have to be thinking about ways in which we can all be either accelerating existing processes or finding new ways to get from here to there. Like, I think we've uncovered a number of those sort of topics that are relevant for all of our consideration. But if the Department of State team has anything to add on the topic of acceleration, I'd be happy to defer to you as well.
I don't think I have anything to add other than what I've already pointed out. We have done everything we can to accelerate that process, to review our processes and try and take out any of the sort of dead timeline under that former 3 to 4 year approach. So we'll obviously that's an ongoing process. As we find holes in the schedule, and hopefully we will accelerate. But I think we've kind of reached our maximum efficiency to get this done by the end of 2024 and have the 2024 model codes be active in New York with New York changes in 2024.
And then last but not least, Bob, thanks for your feedback on the change. I mean, that's what we're here to take in, right? So let's move on to Gavin and see what he has to add with respect to the proposal from staff.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Matt. I have a question for Matt and maybe one for Carl based on prior discussion on buildings. I get a lot of questions on a daily basis about local law 97 and what's going on in New York City. How does the state's process line up with what the city of New York is doing in the retrofitting buildings in the city? Do we have an answer to that? So that we don't have 2 separate codes under development.
Matt, if you're speaking, we can't hear you.
Just 2
Matt,
things.
can you hear us? Yep.
Yeah, this is John Dario. Yeah, 2 things. Obviously, the uniform code is effective statewide, except New York City. The New York State Energy Code is in effect in the whole state, including New York City. But there are, as far as local law 97, that I think there's no direct line between that and what the state requirements are at this point. I don't know if that really answers your question, but it is slightly, it is different, even though they're required to have a code, energy code that's at least restrictive as a state code.
I may be getting too far afield, but I would encourage the state to try to reach out to the city so that we don't have a duplicative regulatory process that impacts building owners any more than what they're going to be under with these changes. So sort of regulatory conformity. And Carl, the question I have for you is a couple meetings ago, we talked about cost difference in building retrofits, and you indicated that you had that cost data about how much it costs to retrofit a building, let's say in New York City versus a building in Buffalo. And you were going to supply that information to us about building cost different for building owners?
Yeah, forgive me if I said I was going to bring forward and I haven't. I'll take note of that. You know, we have data from our potential studies and from programs that we can look into and see kind of what would be cost differentials for upstate versus downstate retrofits.
Yeah, I made a specific note of that because I think one of the things that I've been harping on is the cost issue for a lot of folks. And I remember you said that you had the data. I'd be interested in that. I'm sure my fellow council members would.
Yeah, absolutely. We can follow up.
Thank you.
Great. Peter?
Yeah, thanks, Doreen. It's Peter Iwanowitz. In the draft plan, as it relates to this sort of issue area, we just talked without the level of specificity of prohibit gas and oil equipment for all this stuff. We didn't add the words fossil fuel in front of that. But as last meeting and what was said earlier today, we've added the words fossil fuel in front of gas or oil. I would urge just to go back to the draft plan language and just say gas or oil and not add that qualifier of fossil fuels, given where we are in other fuels that are gaseous or oil.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I note Ann Reynolds and Gary Ginsberg have joined us here in Albany, and you have.
Yeah, on the building code thing. So, forgive me if you said this last time, but did you or do we need to roll the relative delay into the integration analysis to make sure we still meet the emissions reductions on schedule? That's one question. And building codes not being my area of expertise, it sounds like skipping over the 2021 code and going right to the 2024 code would be a good thing. But do we know already that they're changing much with any significance between those two versions? Like, are we waiting because we're expecting the 2024 one more strict?
Yeah, there are a lot of benefits with the 2024, which includes obviously increased efficiency for the energy code. There's also that it allows lower GWP refrigerants. It also addresses the storage issue of classifying the refrigerants as A2L rather than A2. And there's also increased resiliency, which is there's certain requirements when you build back for FEMA that you have to be on the most current version of the model code. And also there's some items that address energy storage systems and PV improvements, and then also getting the updated reference standards, which include some of the items that I just talked about. So there are some really critical things with the 2024, in my opinion.
Thanks. And the economy-wide emissions question?
Integration analysis.
What was the question?
The extent to which, if there is a shift in a year, how does that impact the integration analysis?
No, it doesn't have any large impact there in the sense that we have to do, the bulk of our work is in the built environment. It's not in the new construction. So we have to push both hard, but it's, much of our work is between now and 2030 in already existing building stock.
Thank you. Donna.
Thank you. Donna DeCarolis, National Fuel. This isn't really a question for the presenter, but it's more of a comment. I think earlier one of the council members mentioned that the plan passed unanimously last year. And I guess what I would just want to clarify is that I think, we voted to advance it for public comment, but to say that the contents passed unanimously, I don't think is accurate. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Donna. It is true that the draft was passed for public comment. And of course, now we're working to determine what's in the final plan. Okay, so I know we have questions in New York, but we'll go to the digital world first. I believe, Dennis, you had a question?
Yeah, thanks, Nora. And yeah, and I'm not sure if it's Matthew or John, because John mentioned storage. I think I'm just trying to understand how we're looking at storage, because it's kind of like, it's not really captured very well in 2018 or 2021, but I think 2024 will be a key, because as batteries move closer to impacting the electric system, or maybe even help complement the electric system, there's got to be input, I think, early from the product vendors, because there's so many different types out there now. There's lead acid, lithium, flow batteries, sulfur, et cetera, et cetera. Plus, there's now chemistry-based storage systems that are on the rise. So how do you involve the next generation technology, given New York's aggressive goals on battery storage? Are you including these types of interactions? Because I think you need more batteries either within a building, on top of a building, in a basement. I think it's a lot different than grid storage once buildings and transportation really start to decarbonize. The impact on the demand is going to be dramatic. So I don't know how you're using or getting the product vendors involved in this, so that we're ahead of the building code game versus always catching up to it.
Yeah, this is John. I can answer that in part, I guess. And one of the reasons going is 2024, because this is a national process with the I-code. So all the I would say a lot of the vendors there, the manufacturers of battery storage systems are there. They were involved in the next update to the code, the 2024. So that's part of the reason of doing that. But we also, this last update, we made a change and incorporate some of the 21 code changes for energy storage systems to try to keep updated with that. So we're constantly getting input from the manufacturers, either on the national level through the I-codes or through the state level. So yes, I share your concern with that, because it's constantly changing technology, and part of the reason why we want to update to the 2024 is to have the most current version.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Rose, I understand you have your hand up as well?
Yeah, actually, first of all, apologize that my video is off, but I'm having connectivity problems. Most of my questions were answered, but one just really general clarification on the code process. When you go out and you solicit, community input, if that community input is contrary to some of the code changes that this council is suggesting, how do you reconcile that? Do we go through a whole new community process?
Well, I'll take that one, John. The SAPA process puts us, in requirements where we are getting public comment almost constantly for about a year. And that information is then boiled down by staff into bullet points and for the code council members themselves. The code council members, and remember, most of them are either experts in the field or have a strong understanding of enforcement. They then make sort of the decisions as to what changes need to be made. What goes out to the public over the next year is generally what the code council agrees to from a high level approach. So obviously the code council is going to take what this body says very seriously and put likely a lot of it into the code as we move forward. So it would mean changing course, and that would require council members to seriously consider such a course change. So I try to answer your question there. As with any public body, it is up to the members to change course if they hear something that resonates, but it would require 9 members to move in a different direction.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. And just noting, I don't believe anyone else on virtually had questions, so I'll turn it over to the New York City room, please, to weigh in.
Hi, Paul Shepson here. In light of Bob's comment and recognizing Matt's assertion that we can't get to adoption of the revised code any faster than the schedule that's shown here, I'm still curious as to whether there has been any analysis of the impact of letting the schedule slip by a year in terms of our ability to meet the requirements of the Act.
Yeah, so again, hi, Paul, it's Carl. We can certainly get back to you with any more details, but again, the bulk of our transformation is going to be outside of code for the very near term. Code is critical for the transition of our building stock over a long period of time. So it's clearly a core piece of the overall policy construct. But for the next few years, our activities have to focus on the existing building stock and getting transformation outside of code.
Okay.
So, Mario Salento, I wasn't part of this group a year ago when this was initially discussed, or as long ago as it was. I'll just keep it brief. Matt, I thought did a great job lining out the process. Usually I'd like to defer to the experts, and if the recommendation is to update this process, I would be supportive of that. That was it.
Oh, Marion, we're not able to hear you here in Albany. I think you're on mute again.
Can you hear me now, Doreen?
Yeah, can you try again? Sorry, we heard
Okay.
only the first part.
Horrible commercial. Sorry. Okay, just really quick, I wasn't part of the council, unfortunately, a year ago, or whenever this was first discussed. I would just say I thought Matt did a great job laying out the process. Obviously, there's been a little bit more research and effort put into this over the last year, and I try to always listen to the experts on this, so I would be supportive of this new updated process. Thank you, Doreen.
Thank you. Thanks for repeating yourself. Are there others in New York? Looks like no. Okay, well, certainly thank you, Matt and John, for the presentation. Hope it was useful for others, and to Vanessa and Suzanne for joining us as well. So as we turn to the next slide, I will turn the meeting over to Carl Moss from NYSERDA to provide some further updates relating to the integration analysis modeling work. So over to you, Carl.
Thanks, Doreen. And thanks, everyone, for allowing me to come to you today and give a brief update. I only have a couple of slides here today. This is in response to a request from the council to do a comparison between the recent NYSO resources and system outlook report that was just published and the work that we've been doing with you all for the past year and a half. They're both deep dives into the electricity system. I will try to keep it at a high level, but I do want to highlight some of the key similarities and some of the key differences, and I'm happy to talk afterwards for anyone who wants to go deeper. Next slide. So what we looked at, there are a number of different scenarios and sensitivities that both groups have conducted, both the New York ISO and the integration analysis team for the scoping plan. We focus on comparing our scenario 2, which was what we call a suprazonal capacity expansion model. So we Our team lumped some of the ISO zones to make larger zones. So the geographic granularity is around a handful of zones, and it's a capacity expansion model. So it's looking at how the capacity may grow or change over time. The ISO also did at least 2 scenarios. We're going to focus on their scenario 2 because it's the one that's most aligned with our scenario 2. It's a coincidence that they have the same nomenclature. They looked at 2 different modeling platforms and 2 different levels of granularity. So they also did a capacity expansion model to say how will the system grow over time. They also did production cost modeling, which looks at nodal. So instead of just a handful of zones, at thousands of zones, to look at detail of how energies flow throughout the state. So that's a more detailed analytics suite than we brought. So it'll be interesting to see some of the nuances of what's been learned from each study. So again, some of the key similarities, it's the same electrified load shape as our integration analysis. So we've been working very closely with the ISO, and we think it's important that we think in that we learn from each other in terms of what we think will be the energy services that will be needed in the state, and then how they could be met by different decarbonization pathways. And so part of the reason of comparing these 2 scenarios is that they both use the same basic loads. The other aspect, but just to state it, is that both studies looked at all of our CLCP specifications. So hitting 70 by 30, so 70% renewable by 2030, a 100% zero emission grid by 2040, and then some of those special resource carve-outs, such as energy storage, offshore wind. So some of the differences, again, I'm going to try to keep it at a high level. Happy to talk about some of these afterwards with anyone who wants to get a little more detailed. There were different models. So there are different tools that different teams are using that can be actually really helpful because we can then compare how some of these different tools give us different or similar outcomes. There were different assumptions around resource costs and overall performance. So again, we can learn from those differences, especially if we see similarities, which I'll show. Different granularity, as I mentioned, between zones and also nodal. So between a handful of different ways of splitting up the state to looking at it as thousands of different nodes. The integration analysis and the NISO outlook included different treatment of imports and exports. This one gets pretty weedy pretty quickly, so I won't get into a lot of details here, but I'm happy to talk about that, and I'll show in a subsequent slide how that import-export treatment plays out differently in the outcomes. The integration analysis modeling treats the CHPE, the Champlain-Hudson Power Express, as incremental resource to our 70 by 30. That's per the rule from the PSC. So in the language of the order, that resource would be incremental, and you'll see in a subsequent slide what that means in terms of difference of the model outcomes. And then one final high-level key difference is, as part of the integration analysis, we endogenously looked at hydrogen production and looked at the energy needed for that. So that's additional load that we added that they didn't have as part of their overall system look. And we had more load flexibility. An example was we looked at aggressive electric vehicle charging flexibility, so we would have different peaks. So that's the framing of some differences and similarities, and I'll highlight a couple points of how those played out in the results. So just 2 more slides. So next slide. So first we take a snapshot of 2030. And so the graphs on the left are the capacity. So what's the installed capacity in megawatts? The bar on the left is the NISO scenario 2. The bar on the right is the integration analysis scenario 2. The graph on the right is the generation. So that's the amount of energy, the volume of energy that capacity would bring to the system. Again, the bar on the left is the ISO scenario 2, and that's the detailed production cost model. And the bar on the right is integration analysis. So the first takeaway, you can just kind of look at the bars and see it, that overall we seem well aligned in 2030. Both studies see substantial build out of offshore wind and onshore wind, solar and storage to the tune of gigawatts of each. And load is primarily met by zero carbon resources in 2030 in both studies. So a couple of the nuanced differences. The IA treatment of the Champlain-Hudson Express as incremental leads to the fact that in our work in integration analysis, we have to build more solar in order to achieve 70 by 30. So you'll see that the solar section is a little bit larger in the capacity, and that's because we bring on more solar. And on the right, we have more solar generation, which means we have a smaller amount of needed natural gas generation. So you see that the dark gray is a little bit smaller in the integration analysis. Now, these are shades of each other. We need to keep in mind that these types of long-term system models, we're looking at direction and order of magnitude. So I want to emphasize that these studies are actually highly complementary to each other, even though very different modeling platforms and some different assumptions when we look at 2030. Another difference you may note if you look very closely is that the integration analysis modeling includes the opportunity for gas resources to convert to zero emission firm in 2040. So on the two bars on the left, that dark gray is a little bit bigger integration analysis. What the NISO assumed starting in 2030 is that you would have to bring on the new zero emission carbon resources. So they see a small sliver of that in the red. It's starting to get built as early as 2030. So that's a structural difference in the modeling that plays out in a very small way in terms of the outcomes. You'll notice on the right, there is no red. So there's actually no energy being made by those resources. They're purely there in a small degree for the capacity. So that's some of the 2030 comparisons. So then to wrap it up, we'll look at 2040, where we do see some more differences. So next slide, please. Again, our finding is that these two scenarios remain largely the same. So just to see what's similar between them, by 2040, both build substantial gigawatts of wind and solar and storage, as well as over 20 gigawatts of the zero carbon firm resource. So that's that right red. And so again, directionally, we're seeing very similar graphs on both sides, and that's reinforcing of the fact that even with different modeling platforms, we're seeing that there's a substantial need for zero carbon firm resources. We see that the systems are dominated by wind, solar, and water when you look on the right in terms of where the energy is coming from. But let's unpack some of those slight differences. So for the NISO scenario, there's slightly higher overall resource build. That's that bar on the far left. You'll see it's slightly larger. And that's a function of a few things. First of all, as I mentioned, there's less flexibility of load, so there's higher peaks. So you need more capacity in their system future than in the integration analysis. Secondarily, we see lower resource capacity factors. So that's the factor you take that installed capacity, you turn it into energy, and there's slightly lower of those factors in the ISO modeling. And that's driven by a couple things. They have an evolution of solar output being a little bit lower. Despite you see similar builds of solar, but you see less solar energy. Secondarily, they assume more land-based wind and less offshore wind. And offshore wind has a higher capacity factor. We get more energy out of a given wind turbine when it's offshore because we have a much stronger resource. So those are the two primary factors why we see that there are lower resource capacity factors. Finally, there's higher renewable energy curtailment in the NISO's case, and that contributes, it doesn't address all of it, but that contributes to some of the need for some of that additional zero carbon firm resource. So you do see that there's a slightly larger red block there, and there's more curtailment of renewables, which is not surprising. They have a more detailed nodal model. So those are some of the insights that we can get from the ISO's work. It's kind of some more granular look at how the curtailment of our wind and solar might play out in the system. Finally, I mentioned that there's different treatment of imports, and we'll see that allowing net imports, such as what the NISO does reduce the overall in-state generation. And that's on the bars on the right. See, there's a little white gap between the black load and the stack of in-state resources. So there's a small amount of net imports. Our reading of the CLCPA is that actually couldn't happen. You couldn't have out-of-state fossil supplying. So we solved for no net imports of out-of-state fossil. So that's a different interpretation of the CLCPA, and we do need to grow together as a community of kind of how we're going to see that play out. It didn't have a very large impact, but that's one of those small differences. So I know it was a big fire hose, but hopefully that's a quick overview of how these compare. I think the key takeaway is I'm really pleased by the amount of similarity in some of the key takeaways. We also have some interesting things that we can learn from the work that they're doing. And we will be engaging with the ISO in the coming years on the work. So with that, Doreen, I think we can do questions.
Yes, certainly. So just looking here in Albany, I guess we'll start here, and I believe that's Donna?
I think you, go ahead.
Oh, Bob was, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
I wasn't watching for the order, but why don't we just start with
No
Bob?
worries. Thank you, Doreen. Thank you, Donna. Carl, that's really encouraging. Thank you for the oversight and the fact that there's such close agreement. I think is really impressive, but also very encouraging to us. A couple, well, one question for the 2040 data. What's the basis for the lower generation in the ISO per capacity. Is that?
Yeah, so we're still unpacking that. I think some of that is the curtailment that I mentioned. So, as we see congestion in the system, we do anticipate we'll get, slightly lower amounts of energy delivered to load. So that might be something that we're learning from their work. We also need to unpack if it's also baked into some of the assumptions over time. But I think part of it is the curtailment issue.
Yeah, interesting. That's helpful. And I agree with you on the CLCPA's prohibition on fossil import of electricity. I think that's pretty clear. So thank you for that. I'll just make a comment beyond that. And you mentioned that you have more ability in your model for the EV flexibility, charging flexibility. That's important. And I think that just highlights a point that Dennis has made repeatedly, that we really need to pay attention to how we manage the demand in the whole system, in addition to storage. So I would just emphasize that. Thank you. Great job.
Oh, Carl, thanks. I've been pushing for a lot of this information in the past, the coordination with the ISO. I think this is really good information. What I'm trying to understand is, and I'm looking at my notes from the draft scoping plan, we acknowledge in the plan that we need to develop new technologies to get to 100 by 40. We talk about replacing fossil facilities with renewables, energy storage, efficiency, other technologies. The draft plan says that we need DFERS, which is a zero emission technology, to replace dual fuel, but the scoping plan itself only discusses energy storage. And your charts here say storage and show a major percentage of storage, and I get that and support that. But there's no conversation about what that zero carbon firm fuel is, which we can't run an electricity system without that. So I've harped on that many, many times as well as some others. So where are we, how did we get to that, I guess?
How do we get to the scoping plan
Well,
narrative?
to put even the zero carbon firm, because that isn't reflective of what the scoping plan says.
Yeah, so I guess in the integration analysis chapter in the scoping plan, it does specify zero carbon firm is going to be necessary during those kind of classic winter doldrum areas. So,
Okay, I got specific notes.
Yeah.
On page 170, it only discusses storage being that option.
So it sounds like that we need to further elaborate then
On
that
what we're
section
talking about.
on the zero carbon resources.
And under the law, the Public Service Commission is to determine what those zero emission technologies are.
Right.
I have been pushing the PSC for 2 years with labor unions and others to come up and make that determination. Is it renewable natural gas? Is it hydrogen? What is it? And I think we're really missing it, the boat here, if we're not identifying some process to identify what those zero emission resources are. It's my point.
Okay, no, I think that's a great point, and I think it's a good segue to a section later when we talk about the electricity chapter. So
Okay.
we can bring that back up.
I just don't want to lose that point.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks.
Donna DeCarolis, thanks, Carl, and thanks, Storm. So my question is around the New York ISO September 22nd analysis, and they had the 2 scenarios, and you did a lot of work with the 1. What about scenario 1? So you use scenario 2. When I looked at that report, I saw a big range of kind of the missing zero carbon firm or DFERS, however we want to describe it, of a range of 27 to 45 gigawatts.
Right.
And scenario 2 has the 27, but scenario 1 has the 45. So
Yeah.
we all want reliability. I wondered about modeling scenario 1.
Yeah, so their scenario 1 was a highly unmanaged future, and it actually somewhat aligns with the work that I presented last time. So if you recall from last time, we looked at what if heat pumps are going to perform worse? What if we don't get energy efficiency? What if we have less load flexibility? And our peak went up to almost 60 gigawatts.
Yeah.
So in both of those cases, as I mentioned, there are multiple scenarios. I think that worldview that I showed last time and their scenario 1 is a bit of a worst case benchmark. What if we don't have energy efficiency, as we talked about the importance of that? What if we have low performing, not cold climate heat pumps, but heat pumps that can't perform well in the cold? What are the risks that you would see? And so I think there's a lot of value to their scenario 1, as there was to the work that I presented last week. But to me, that's a bookend that shows what does an unmanaged electrification world look like? And that's where I've emphasized our scenario 2 and their scenario 2, which is more aligned with what does a managed future look like that has energy efficiency. So both scenarios are certainly valuable. I think we can learn from both of them.
And they'll
we
both
should.
be included, obviously, in the final plan, then, you think?
Certainly. I mean, I
Yeah.
think our, our sensitivity on unmanaged future will be included in the plan. I think it's important work. It showed the value of ground source heat pumps and thermal networks, but in and of itself, it showed us what's the value of energy efficiency, what's the value of really getting at flexible load.
Thank you. I know Tom Falcone, I believe, has a question in New York City. Tom?
More just a comment. I do remember a discussion about zero carbon from resources. I think it was from last October and in November. We spent a good bit of time on it. And I thought we had identified that there were 20 gigawatts needed, and it certainly needed to have a reliable electric system. But I thought there were a number of different technologies that might fill that in. We talked about hydrogen, we talked about other things. I just want to point one thing out, which is that I don't know that we have to decide what they are right now. I don't know anybody whose crystal ball is that accurate. If we were doing this integration analysis 5 years ago, I'm pretty sure we would have predicted a lot less offshore wind than we have today. It's the nature of technology. These are assumptions and changes. But the thing we do need to do is make a lot of progress over the next 5 years to the next scoping plan. I don't know that we have to solve the 2035 problem in 2022 based on 2022 information, but we certainly shouldn't be ruling out possible solutions. We should be thinking about how these possible technologies will come to play. But the idea that we're going to be able to identify them today, it strikes me as very optimistic.
Can I clarify? I'm not asking for us to identify them. What I'm asking for is to find out what complies with the statute by the PSC. And two, just like we did with the various tiers of NYSERDA, what market are we going to put in place to attract that private investment and that innovation to New York State so that we don't lose it to another state? That is my point, and that is only my point. I don't want to sit here and say that hydrogen's off the table or renewable natural gas is. I'm saying the state of New York is slow to start a market and a process to send a signal to these private companies, we want your zero emission technology here in New York. And that takes time. And that's all my point is.
Thank you, Gavin. Anyone else in New York City? No? Looks like they're good. How about online? Dennis, you had your hand raised?
Yeah, thanks, Doreen. Always love hearing from Carl. I'd like to spend a little more time offline with you, just because I'm kind of like, I'd like to get more understanding of the detail of what goes into this type of analysis. Because the intuition that, when you look at the ISO and, they really, it was, I think, dramatically different numbers out there. And maybe it's an issue that it would be interesting to get some sort of a joint reconciliation type statement. Since you're working with them a great deal, it would be good to make sure that they're subject matter expert, kind of like also make the same type of determination that you have. I think that would make me feel a lot better, to be honest, that's possible. The second thing is that are we getting real-time data out of these systems that we're installing? I just have not seen it. I know that I actually have been working with a company that's hanging real-time meters on some of these solar farms, and the outputs, are alarming a little bit to me, and I need more. I need to look into that a little bit further. But if at all possible, a reconciliation between yourself and the ISO would make me feel better. If we could have an offline call just on the details, I'd really appreciate that.
Great, Dennis. We will follow up with you.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we've exhausted the comments, but thank you, Carl. Maybe we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Who knows?
We'll see what you might bring us next. Thank you. If we turn to the next slide, this is the part of the discussion in which we're going to turn to discussion of feedback by topic area or by chapter. And as indicated earlier, we'll be discussing the topics of electricity and climate justice. And as we've done in the previous several meetings, in addition to reviewing the public feedback, any unresolved climate justice working group feedback previously provided but not fully integrated into the draft scoping plan will also be presented for the council members to consider. Certainly during the following presentation, staff will capture feedback and reactions from the council and use this information to craft proposed revisions to draft scoping plan text for consideration by the council. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jessica Waldorf, Chief of Staff and Director of Policy Implementation at the Department of Public Service, to cover electricity first. Next slide, please, and over to you, Jessica.
Doreen, and hi everybody. Sorry I couldn't be in person today, but as Doreen said, I'm here today to provide a report out on the public comments received for the draft scoping plan related to the chapter on electricity. And if we can flip to the next slide, please, that'd be great. As a reminder, this chapter was one of the longer ones and included 10 specific strategies within 3 key themes, including transforming power generation, enhancing the grid, and investing in new technology. The next several slides will highlight key themes from those comments. The first theme of comments received related to renewable energy siting and interconnection. Within this theme, commenters expressed support for projects that support smart land use, including maximizing the use of built environments, resiliency, and equity in the siting of infrastructure. Several commenters proposed streamlining and expediting timelines for permitting and interconnection processes across authorities having jurisdiction and the utilities. Additional comments related to the preservation of culture and tradition in siting infrastructure, including indigenous resources, an evaluation of the role of utilities in building and owning renewable energy projects, and concerns about the impact of renewable energy development on farmland and forests. Specifically, commenters encourage mitigation strategies such as the development of a comprehensive agrivoltaics program. The next theme related to renewable energy procurement and goals. Here, commenters expressed general concerns that renewable energy procurement goals are either too fast or too slow. Some commenters recommended annual targets for renewable energy infrastructure permitting and a consistent RFP schedule. Commenters supported prioritizing energy efficiency and demand management to reduce the overall load on the electric grid as we increase electrification efforts and support development of long-duration energy storage as well as other demand-side solutions. Lastly, many comments were received in support of strong labor standards, workforce development, and targeted training programs. Next slide, please. The next set of comments related to the phasing out of fossil fuel power generation infrastructure. Here, many commenters expressed support for coordinating gas and electricity transition, as well as ensuring overall energy system reliability and energy affordability are maintained throughout the process of transitioning both. Commenters expressed support for a schedule to phase out fossil fuel plants with a focus on those located in disadvantaged communities, including leveraging the DEC peaker role to do so. There were comments received both in support and in opposition for a moratorium on new or repowered fossil fuel power plants. Those in opposition to a moratorium cited concerns about impacts to grid reliability, and those in support expressed the need to ensure we move away from combustion of fossil fuels and not allow any expansion of fossil fuel generation infrastructure. Additional comments supported a ban on Bitcoin mining operations and for the retirement and or repurposing of existing fossil fuel power plant sites. Many comments were received related to nuclear energy and existing renewable energy sources. Those included strong concerns related to potential loss of baseline renewable generation needed for reliability, including nuclear and hydropower resources. Specifically, comments included support and opposition for continuing investments in nuclear generation, and then support for extending the existing Tier 2 program of the Clean Energy Standard that supports baseline renewable generation like hydropower and wind. Some commenters also support a barriers analysis for the repowering of solar, wind, and hydropower facilities. Next slide, please. The next set of comments related to reliability and resiliency and community engagement and disadvantaged community considerations. On reliability and resiliency, many commenters expressed strong concerns about the reliability of the grid, including black start capability as the state transitions to increasing amounts of intermittent renewable energy resources. Commenters stressed the importance of increasing the resiliency of the grid to withstand impacts of extreme weather and other events. Commenters also called for the need to prioritize firm and dispatchable generation, emissions-free resources, demand-side solutions, and reserve margins to reduce peak demand and increase system reliability. Commenters also stressed the importance of the New York State Reliability Council and the New York State ISO reliability planning process being included in the analysis of the reliability of the transmission and distribution system. There was a specific call to prioritize renewable energy development, microgrids, and fossil fuel power plant closure in disadvantaged communities. Commenters supported prioritizing climate education and awareness raising about the benefits of renewable energy, including providing local governments and indigenous populations support to actively participate in the energy transition. Additionally, commenters support better coordination of state energy efficiency and bill payment assistance programs to deliver benefits to low to moderate income or LMI consumers. Additionally, commenters noted a preference for grants versus tax credits, noting that they provide better support to LMI consumers and also supporting opt-out community solar to assist in getting the benefits of clean energy to LMI residents and disadvantaged communities. Next slide, please. This is the final slide of public comment themes. The first theme focuses on transmission development and renewable energy integration. Here, many commenters express support for improved and better coordinated transmission planning and renewables integration. Specifically, commenters urged that transmission planning must both improve local and bulk transmission infrastructure in order to achieve the Climate Act goals. Additionally, commenters supported the prioritization of improving the local grid and development of local renewable resources, as well as support for the Public Service Commission's coordinated grid planning process and public policy transition need processes to streamline renewable energy integration. The second theme focuses on market-based strategies where commenters express strong support for zero-emission dispatchable generation, including the examination of using clean dispatch credits. Commenters also support redesigning incentives for renewable energy development, including support for added incentives for grayfield sites, as well as support for multi-technology projects, energy storage, and demand-side solutions. There was also strong support for a comprehensive cost analysis study that includes the cost of construction for renewables and other zero-emission energy sources, a regional cost analysis, and one that provides enhanced transparency on customer bill impacts. Finally, commenters expressed the need to evaluate the potential for price volatility in the electricity market during the clean energy transition, and also support advocacy to the New York ISO and Federal Energy Regulatory Commission for energy market reforms, specifically noting expansion of the team at the Department of Public Service that focuses on this advocacy. Next slide, please. There were four main comments from the Climate Justice Working Group focused on electricity. The first focused on retirement of fossil fuel-fired generation facilities. The Climate Justice Working Group expressed supportive strategies to facilitate the retirement of these facilities and that the Council take the additional step of placing a moratorium on the permitting of new fossil fuel plants until the final scoping plan is in place or until there is a demonstrated reliability need that can only be addressed with fossil fuel generation. The draft scoping plan addresses feedback by outlining comprehensive planning processes to support the need for comprehensive planning processes to support the retirement of fossil fuel-fired generation. The second comment focused on the need to invest in transmission and distribution system upgrades, including proactively identifying key transmission and distribution system upgrades, improvements, and new line construction needed to deliver renewable energy across the state and maximize the retirement of fossil-fired resources. The draft scoping plan calls for expansion of the electricity and distribution systems to support continued integration of additional renewable energy resources, and also calls for speeding up the pace of processing interconnection applications. Third, the Climate Justice Working Group supports the call for continued efforts to improve reliability and resiliency to extreme weather events and climate change but suggests that the New York ISO and its processes should be more transparent and information better disseminated with local energy advocates. It also suggests that there is a need to address extreme heat vulnerabilities and the need for resiliency investments related to increased water demand for cooling and power line infrastructure of power plants and power line infrastructure, with a prioritization of storm hardening investments in those communities that have been historically burdened. The draft scoping plan addresses this by recommending power system studies and planning that should consider analysis to integrate climate change impacts as needed for reliability and resiliency, and that infrastructure investments should continue to improve reliability and resiliency to extreme weather events. The last comment from the Climate Justice Working Group expressed support for the near-term focus on achievement of the 70 by 30 goals via deployment of currently available solutions. However, it expresses strong concern about the promotion of certain emerging technologies, including green hydrogen, renewable natural gas, other biofuels, biomass, and waste to energy, which it claims can add more greenhouse gas emissions to the environment rather than less, and also leads to more localized pollution, which is heavily concentrated in environmental justice communities. The Climate Justice Working Group highlights the need for further research and consideration of life cycle greenhouse gas emission accounting and potential air quality and health impacts of these technologies prior to supporting demonstration projects. The Climate Justice Working Group also recommends a life cycle analysis of the environmental health, safety, emissions, and environmental justice impacts of nuclear fuel as the state evaluates the existing upstate nuclear fleet. The draft scoping plan specifically calls out the need to ensure historically disadvantaged communities do not see an increase in co-pollutants or a reduction in air quality as a result of the use of advanced fuels, and suggests that further analysis, technical development, and research is needed in order to determine the feasibility and climate and health impacts of advanced fuels to ensure that they provide net benefit. I'd also note that a lot of these points were addressed in prior presentations related to gas system transition and advanced fuels. Next slide, please. The next two slides will outline the staff recommendations to address the significant comments received. While the draft scoping plan addresses many of the comments received, there were several key areas where staff feels additional detail and clarification can be added. First, with regards to fossil fuel generation facilities, staff proposes adding additional detail regarding the potential to repurpose these facilities for clean energy alternative uses, for example, storage, and to clarify that any retirement or repurposing of existing generation is done in coordination with the New York State Reliability Council and New York State Independent System Operator reliability planning processes. Staff also proposes including text about prioritizing the retirement and or repurposing of facilities located in disadvantaged communities, and to clarify the need to maintain energy affordability and overall system reliability during the clean energy transition, consistent with recommendations also proposed under the gas system transition chapter. To address comments on streamlining siting, permitting, and interconnection, staff proposes including text about enhanced coordination among state agencies having jurisdiction for permitting, in addition to utilities, text to prioritize use of existing developed land to minimize land impacts on farmland, forests, and other cultural resources, and to expand language on agrivoltaics to include a study on the development of a comprehensive agrivoltaics program. Regarding enhanced community engagement and education, staff recommends that the Public Service Commission assess mechanisms to minimize rate impacts, including, for example, its existing energy affordability policy program. Staff also recommends including language on the need for enhanced coordination of the various state bill payment assistance and energy efficiency incentive programs, and to strengthen language regarding community education, including education to Indigenous populations and the need for a statewide education and awareness campaign to educate consumers about the benefits of a clean energy economy. Next slide, please. To address comments related to coordinated transmission planning, staff proposes to add language to emphasize the importance of cost-effective local transmission and distribution electric system upgrades, and to add detail on coordinated transmission planning processes, including the strategic role that energy storage can play. Staff proposes the final scoping plan include language that clarifies the importance of increasing the resiliency of the grid to be able to withstand the impacts of extreme weather and other events, to address comments related to maintaining energy system safety, reliability, and resiliency. Additionally, staff proposes to include language about evaluating the barriers and level of support needed for repowering and/or maintaining existing renewable energy resources, including wind and hydropower, and to add detail on the need for DPS and NYSERDA to identify, develop, and evaluate the zero-emission dispatchable generation technologies necessary to meet the 100 by 2040 CLCPA requirement. Lastly, to address comments related to renewable energy procurement, costs, and standards, staff proposes to include a recommendation for a more detailed cost and benefits analysis of renewable energy investments that includes a regional cost analysis, detailed benefits assessment, and customer bill impact. Staff also proposes to add language about including labor standards, workforce development, and targeted training programs as part of clean energy infrastructure development. That concludes my presentation, and now I'll take a pause for any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. Appreciate your detailed presentation here today. Looking in Albany at this moment, I don't see any questions. So how about we start with New York City, please?
Hey, Paul Shepson here. Could you go back one slide, please? So in the first section, when it refers to energy affordability, that phrase just concerns me a little bit, and I'm wondering if we have discussed how that is defined. What do those two words together mean? Quantitative term. If we're going to, in the document, clarify the need to maintain energy affordability.
Sure. Thanks, Paul. And I know we had this discussion as part of the gas system transition subgroup and kind of outlined the need to define what we mean by energy affordability. I believe, historically we've defined it within the context of the Public Service Commission's energy affordability policy as a proxy and targeted, making sure that consumers don't pay more than 6% or don't suffer from more than 6% energy burden, as a percentage of their income. So I think that's one potential strategy, and I think the scoping plan may even nod to that already, but that's something that we could point to and include a reference to within the final scoping plan.
Thank you, Jessica. I'm sorry, I don't remember that conversation. My apologies.
No worries. Thank you.
I've got a bunch of questions, but thank you for raising the energy affordability issue. I know we've talked about this before too, but the idea of maintaining energy affordability, I think is a bit of a misnomer. I think that our energy in New York State is not affordable as it is now. We have we're third in terms of the highest energy costs in the country right now. So maintaining energy affordability is not the correct verbiage, but we do want to achieve energy affordability, manage energy burdens, et cetera. So I wanted to mention that. Got some other things. One thing that I think that the staff comments, seems like the police are having a conversation. Sure, it's very important security conversation. We need to, how have we thought about the Inflation Reduction Act analysis of those costs and benefits? And what I thought was Carl's very interesting and really important presentation last meeting about price sensitivities, and so what it means for folks who are left on the fossil gas system and how unaffordable that may remain and how unequal the technologies in terms of who can access some of the IRA benefits are. So I guess I'll stop, and that's a question in terms of, have we thought about the IRA analysis, and can we consider that in the scoping plan as well, because the 70 billion by 2050 is very significant.
Yeah, I'll start and then happy if Carl wants to jump in a little bit on the IRA and potential integration of that within the final scoping plan. I think that's a good point, Raya. And I think one of the earlier slides within the presentation noted some public comments of concern about, price volatility with regards to electricity. And I think, my reaction to that and, what I was trying to capture in some of the staff recommendations is I do think we have to, provide some additional detail, or we could provide some additional detail rather in the final scoping plan about, what we view as price stability with the transition to cleaner energy technologies and movement away from, fossil generation resources. But I also think that that's a good point to potentially, fold in some of the work that Carl presented on the last meeting. With that, I'll pause and see if he wants to jump in.
Yeah, nothing much to add. That was great, Jess. Just, I guess I'd say that we will highlight the IRA sensitivity in that section of the report, and we will look to how we can integrate that language into the actual each of the sectors, so they can highlight the opportunity to leverage federal dollars to help move us forward. I also neglected to add, Raya, that we have added an extra slide to the slide deck, which gives a further breakdown of the IRA analysis. So I think you had asked for that before, so that will be in the slide deck as well.
Thank you so much. That's very helpful and interesting. And just want to encourage folks to continue to think about the equity and justice implications of, of what that price stability will mean, for various sectors of the population and the economy. I also wanted to, I think regarding the climate justice working groups can express concerns about RNG, hydrogen, and alternative fuels. I think it's fair to say that they more had concerns about, but there was concerns about the consideration and inclusion of these technologies in the scenarios, period, in addition to wanting to see a more fleshed out analysis. I know we talked about that a lot in the gas transition subgroup, but something I just really want to say on the record again, and I know Paul mentioned this at the last meeting as well, but I really do feel that the current draft scoping plan and current changes don't reflect the true policy and scientific consensus around where RNG and hydrogen in pipelines is a bad idea, an unaffordable idea, a health risk, and a major leak risk, and that we need to be clear-eyed with the citizens of New York State about what we're proposing. And I think that's in the context of National Grid, as reported in Politico, releasing their plan, which they are announcing will be up to 20% hydrogen blending, will not be compliant with the CLCPA. So there's a really challenging context for that. And just I really want the record to reflect that it's not about keeping all options on the table when the scientific and policy community is clear on what is a bad idea and what will ultimately, I'll call it be, I think to put monster fuel, 20% hydrogen blending that Grid mentioned in the Politico article, into folks' homes. And who is going to bear the implications of both the processing and creation of the RNG and hydrogen, and be the ones who have to have these fuels pumped into their homes and have increasing leaky pipes.
Thanks, Raya. Just thank you for those comments. And also just wanted to circle back to your comments on energy affordability. I do think we could propose language that's consistent with how we landed on that in gas system transition with regards to, achieving energy affordability and managing energy burdens. And so that's a really good piece of feedback and one that I'll incorporate. Thank you.
Thank you. At the moment, I see Ann Reynolds' hand, card raised here. It looks like New York is all set. I see them on mute. So Ann, do you have a question?
Sure, and a couple comments. One was on the unresolved climate justice working group slide as well, sort of what Ryan was talking about, but from a different angle. Which was that here we are in the electricity chapter, and this is linking into this, where does it say it? So the support, this is in the fourth one. Supports the near-term focus on achievement of 70 by 30, however, but none of those things are contemplated to be defined as renewable for the 70%. So it might be good to say that more explicitly to address that concern. Right?
That's a good point. Thanks, Dan.
Yep. That was one. The second one is on slide 22. There was a suggestion to add a little bit of additional language to address interconnections. If you could put that one up, slide 22. There we go. Thank you. So, from the not so much distributed solar point of view, but from the grid scale renewables point of view, the interconnection delays are a major, major problem. But if we're going to talk about fixing it, you have to mention the ISO here. And what they need is more staff to do it and an improved process, which they've acknowledged. So I think on that first bullet saying coordination, I guess that's permitting. Sorry. But there should be something about interconnection on the ISO, improving their process.
Yeah, thanks.
That was
Sorry, just real quick, Anne, on that point, I believe the text in the chapter includes language about the New York ISO, so I didn't re-highlight it here, but that's a good point, and I'll make sure that that is well connected in the text.
Yeah, thanks. My bad, because it says permitting right there, and I didn't catch that. My third one was a question where you recommend more detailed cost-benefit assessment. I guess maybe that's on the next slide. Is that contemplated to be in the context of, so the second to last bullet on this slide, I assume that's in the context of a clean energy standard review of some sort, rather than separate from that? And I guess, I guess it's a suggestion that I think it should be for efficiency's sake, rather than another freestanding analysis, but or are you thinking it's something that would happen immediately, or like in 2026?
Yeah, no, I was thinking more the prior, and just clarifying some of the work that we already do in terms of benefit cost analysis, and emphasizing some of that in the language.
Yeah, good. And then last thing for me, and then I'll be quiet. In terms of the evaluation of the zero emissions dispatchable generation, that you're committing DPS and NYSERDA to do here, I guess. It seems like it would be valuable to mention federal support for this, because in the IRA and in the Infrastructure Act, there's a gazillion dollars for nuclear research and hydrogen research and that type of thing. So getting the benefit of that research before you do this, or as you do it, I think would be worth mentioning.
Yeah, thank you for that, Anne. And just to expand a little bit on the, zero emission dispatchable generation point, the draft scoping plan includes some language on the need to identify, explore, evaluate, and develop those resources as they emerge. And what we were noting today is adding some additional detail in order to reflect the public comments received. And that can include clarifying the need to identify those technologies, as is noted here, through a process that includes the ability for stakeholders and the public to weigh in on the various potential resource types. And then I'd also note that through the Clean Energy Fund, the state via the Public Service Commission and NYSERDA are already investing in research and demonstration of various technologies that could be included, such as long duration energy storage, advanced flexible demand technologies, or fuel cells. And additionally, we have open proceedings that the Public Service Commission initiated earlier this year, where that could be the vehicle where we look at actions on how to define zero emission technologies, down the road. But I do want to just note that we certainly are seeking to access some of that federal funding now, And I think, certainly research, demonstration, and evaluation of those technologies will be really informative in terms of, further defining and setting some parameters around what those technologies that will contribute to the 100 by 40 goals look like.
Thanks, Jess. So I guess I'll just voice my support for the staff recommendations, and also, other than the one about renewable siting being too fast, I think that the summary of public input wasn't really internally inconsistent, because I think you could address all of those in there, including reliability as well as the plan. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Anne. Gavin?
I was on this committee, and Jess, you did a great job getting us here. And I don't think anybody around this table likes every recommendation, but I think the report is pretty well done. I do have some concerns. One is about the existing renewable portfolio. We again did not award any awards in the Tier 2 award recently. We have 14 megawatts under contract of eligible facilities. The state is, taking comment on that from January of 2023. It looks to me like we're just pushing this down the street and trying not to make decisions while, existing renewable resources, which are really important to hitting our goal, are going out of state. And the draft scoping plan talked about us looking at how to improve the existing renewable fleet so that we achieve these goals in a reasonable way. And I feel there's a major shortcoming in the staff recommendations on that issue. And I'd ask that before we finalize the scoping plan, we look at that important piece of the puzzle. The other thing I wanted to say, and I could be wrong about this, but I'm trying to understand on the staff recommendations under system reliability, this is my bugaboo about zero emissions, add detail on the need for DPS and NYSERDA to identify. And I'll stand corrected if I'm wrong, but I thought the statute required the PSC, not the DPS, to identify and deal with the zero emission dispatchable generation. If I'm correct about that, and I think I am, I'd rather see it say the Public Service Commission, not the DPS, because there's a real distinction there, as we all know.
That's a good point. And I certainly think that DPS and NYSERDA staff will help to summarize some of the research and work that's being done today, but take your point on the PSC.
Thank you. That's it. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Gavin.
Yeah. Sorry, Doreen, but one quick follow-up to, one quick follow-up to what you were saying, Gavin. I know one of the comments that I summarized was, an evaluation of the support that would be necessary for existing renewables. And so we did include some language here on the slide that's up here about, kind of looking at the barriers and level support that would be needed for repowering and maintaining existing renewables. And so is there something specific or, any other feedback that you have on that? Certainly want to make sure I capture it.
I just want to follow up the commitment that was made in the draft scoping plan, that there's a commitment to this. And I think we're falling short of a commitment to the existing renewable problem. That's my point.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Gavin. Sorry, Peter. I'm understanding that Chair Christian might have a point to respond to Gavin, if that's okay, from New York City. Nope.
No, actually, Jess made the point already in her response, so nothing to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just trying to real-time audit all of this. So Peter was next. Peter?
Great, thank you, Doreen. Hi, Peter Arwanowitz. Staying on this sort of theme about the need for Public Service Commission, Gavin is correct, the statute says commission, and that's sort of to identify and develop the evaluate. I'm wondering, maybe it's a vestige of the draft, but why isn't the environmental agency, DEC, looking at this as well? They are the ones that have the statutory obligation to deal with emissions. And there are other sections of the CLCPA, Section 7, contemplation of an alternative compliance mechanism that doesn't apply to power generation. It seems like there's a lot of different factors that we should be looking at here, not just simply sort of handing it over to agencies that aren't in charge of dealing with emissions. So I guess my ask is, let's add DEC to the mix. No offense to add more work to your plate. But it seems to
Never
me,
stop doing that.
you know me, always have an ask.
Well, it certainly could reference in consultation.
Sure,
Right?
absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, this is Jess. Sorry, go ahead.
No, please, I'm done.
Thank you. Yes, you're correct that the statute identifies PSC. What I was trying to capture here is the agencies that would do some of the work to help support that, right? But certainly it's not meant to be exclusive of others, and we can make sure that we clarify consulting with other relevant agencies. I'd add, in the gas system transition presentation at the last meeting, one of the other things that we included too was Department of Health. And so, again, I don't think it's meant to be exclusive of those other agencies, and we'll certainly, give a nod to coordinating with all of the relevant agencies in this space.
Good point, Jessica. Here in Albany, we have Donna, and then I think we're all set before we go to the virtual.
Thanks, Doreen. Thanks, Jessica. I just wanted to say I thought this was excellent, and I really appreciated seeing the focus on, cost analysis, reliability, resilience, all that. And I had, I guess, just a couple of questions. One is, do you think there is more we should be doing or could be doing to analyze ways to keep the winter peak build out or to reduce the winter peak build out, such as the dual heat pathway for building decarbonization? We haven't talked about it in a while. We talked about it probably last year, but I'm wondering if you think that kind of assessment is being included, the avoided cost and the benefit of that kind of a pathway. So that was one. And then the other one was just a comment, and I think you hit this already, but to one of the prior comments by a fellow council member, in terms of the evaluation of alternative fuels, I do think that we had a view that there needed to be continued analysis and watching of the best science. I wouldn't agree with the characterization that the science is the science. I think the science is ongoing, and blending is happening in different parts of the country right now. So I don't want to put words in your mouth, Jessica, but whatever we agreed to, I think, is what made sense when we said there had to be continued evaluation. And then the third thing is, I wanted to just ask, as we were talking about IRA and analysis and benefits associated with IRA benefits, is renewable natural gas being included in the IRA benefits as we look at those? So, three things a little bit unrelated.
Yeah, and I think I captured each of them. So first, with the winter peak build out and dual heat systems, I know we had a presentation on some analysis done in that respect within the integration analysis scenarios at the last meeting, and also a presentation from the buildings chapter. I think, one of the things that we've seen in the public comments specific to electricity and kind of reflected in the staff recommendations here is the need to look at demand side resources and other ways to reduce system peaks. So I definitely think that'll be part of the solution, as well as, the transition of both the gas and electric systems that are supporting buildings and other sectors. So I think it's all integrated, and why the scoping plan is as long as it is, and how some of these chapters interrelate with each other. And then I'd also say on the last point on the IRA, and, I think where we've landed in our past discussions on alt fuels is, there was a lot of discussion. I don't want to recap it all, but I do think safe to say that we're as a council, and in alignment with the integration analysis scenarios and in alignment with the scoping plan, the role of alternative fuels or the ability to access federal opportunities to help enable the achievement of our, respective clean energy goals. I certainly think we're going to seek it out proactively. And I think, that message is something that's been set in prior meetings here, but also something that, as Carl mentioned, we can certainly look to reflect within the final scoping plan. So thank you for your comments.
Thanks, Jessica.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know who was first, Gavin or Bob. Bob?
Yeah, I think I was. Thank you. Bob Howard, I just wanted to respond a little bit to the science on hydrogen and keep it brief. But this whole idea that hydrogen can be blended into gas pipeline systems usefully, it's a new concept. It's really only been around since about 2018 or so. It came out of the Hydrogen Council, which is a group set up by BP, Total, Shell, and ExxonMobil. And the science, it's taken a while since 2018 for the science to catch up on that, but there is now a lot of science. There are 32 or 33 either peer-reviewed reports or reports from international agencies. So the International Energy Agency's weighed in on it. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has weighed in on it. I think there are about 26 peer-reviewed papers. Every single one says it's a bad idea. And I can go into some detail as to why, if people are interested, but the science on that is really clear, and I want to make that case. If people want to go into details of the science, either Paul Shepson or I am sure to talk for hours on it. But the fact is that the science is very clear. It's not, there are no studies saying it's a good idea other than those that are non-peer reviewed and funded just by industry. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Gavin?
I'll be very quick here. I agree with Peter's suggestion. I think DEC is important to be part of this process on identifying the zero emission technologies. And I think that was a good suggestion, Peter. I was very involved in the Power Gen Advisory Panel. One of the things we didn't talk about here today is nuclear energy. That's 30% emission free of our whole portfolio in this state. The advisory group talked about a recommendation and analysis done by PSC about how do we keep the existing nuclear fleet viable in New York State. I didn't see that mentioned here other than, just a passing reference to nuclear energy. I think the scoping plan needs to come out with something a little more definitive about what the PSC envisions as part of that study that the Power Gen Advisory Group came up with on maintaining nuclear energy, because it's such a big portion of our zero emission portfolio. So that was my last point. I promise.
Thanks, Gavin. Just to respond to your comment on nuclear, the draft scoping plan does include language that outlines analysis should occur prior to the end of the zero emission credit program in 2029 to determine whether subsidizing any of the state's remaining nuclear reactors will be necessary for meeting the 2040 mandate, and or whether more cost-effective and environmentally friendly alternatives are available. And specifically notes that the analysis should consider the ability of nuclear to contribute to baseload and baseload needs and meet reliability requirements, as well as the cost, health, safety, and community impact and environmental concerns of the nuclear power generation facilities. So there is some language in the scoping plan, and I think, as part of the editing process, we can certainly have more discussions on that point.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Gavin, I think on that topic and hearing a number of the comments that have been provided in this section, I do want to note, I've asked our team to take a look at some analysis around that topic of nuclear, just to the extent that not only does it contribute today, which we've discussed, but sort of potential future contributions as well. And this is informed not only by our own needs and the law itself, but also frankly by these federal investments that we've seen come forth at scale. So I can't commit to the timing unless Carl wants to commit to the timing, but I would say I think this is something we'd want to investigate at a future meeting. So just flagging that given where we are with the discussion.
Thanks, Dory.
Yeah. I do know Dennis virtually had a question. Dennis?
Yes, thanks. Jessica, great job as always. One of the things that I'm just trying to kind of like contemplate that I'm not sure is framed within the staff recommendations, and I'm not sure how to include it, but going back to the REV principles of co-location of supply and demand to mitigate some of the distribution system investment, isn't it an interesting time that as we look at buildings, transportation, and even revitalizing our disadvantaged communities, that looking at microgrids as a total solution seems to be something we should be being much more progressive about going forward. And then microgrids being owned by community groups, economic development agencies, developers, energy services companies. and not just looking at changing out, going from a gas to electric or whatever and increasing, but thinking about this much more holistically. Are we contemplating microgrids, in the way you were looking at, or the way we kind of like formulated this process? It seems like now's the time. If there's a better time, I'd like to know.
Thank you. Under the strategy 5 in the draft scoping plan, there's some language about enabling microgrids and district systems. And, specifically the recommendation in the draft plan says, over the next 10 years, NYSERDA should work with utilities and campuses to enable the development of microgrids and district clean energy systems. So it's definitely captured there. And then I'd also note, obviously there's been some work that's happened since the draft scoping plan was issued, including some actions on, district thermal systems and, comprehensive energy networks. So I do think that's certainly a strategy, one that's included in the scoping plan, but, as we look to revise the text, we can certainly have some discussions about some revisions to make on that point.
And I think my major adjustment on that would be not to rely just on utilities, but on market forces, Jess. That was where I was trying to go. Because I think that's not what's included in transmission and distribution planning is, the growth in our communities, but really the impact of converting buildings to transportation, but look at it from market solutions, not simply utility solutions. I think although I think utilities should be involved in microgrids personally, but I don't want to exclude the market. I think the market is not playing a strong enough role in this. And I just think that it's a business opportunity that could formulate good results for us.
Yeah, that's a good point, Dennis. And I should know, I didn't read what was in parentheses in the text in the plan, but it does give a signal to, municipal, schools, private market developers. So there's some text there, but again, can certainly think about the need to expand there.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jess.
Yes, thanks, Dennis. I don't think we have anyone else virtually, but I know there's a couple of people in New York City with questions, so we'll open it back up to New York City.
Hi, Paul Shepson here. Dennis is such a rational guy, and I just want to add to what he has said. I can't stress enough how much I agree with what he just said. And it has bothered me all along that I feel like the language about maintaining the reliability of the grid implies the existing sort of macro scale grid that we are managing. And I think we ought to think carefully about the wording and the final wording in the plan, that thinks about, we should be thinking about ensuring that there's market-based encouragement, if not incentives, for investment in local community distributed energy and microgrids. I think we may be guilty of underemphasizing the importance of this and knowing what the market of the future is going to look like, as we've discussed earlier today about other technologies. Thank you, Dennis.
Thanks.
I guess to Paul's point, I'll just make the point that, the same thing with like maintaining affordability, maintaining reliability. We shouldn't see the status quo as where we want to end up. We should always be looking to improve. I wanted to ask, there was an exchange, I think it was Dorian and Gavin. Could you clarify what you meant, what the request was for the analysis on the IRA with regards to nuclear, I believe? I think one thing I want to make absolutely sure is we know that there were some good things in the IRA. We know there's some bad things, and that we should be taking care not to be looking at any, sorry, that's New York City, you get sirens, and any benefit or subsidy for for technologies or practices that would be counter to, our climate law, and our other energy goals and policies that we have in place. That was a
Yeah, thanks,
question.
Ryan. Yeah, what I had indicated was just a request I had made to our analysis team around the topic of nuclear power generation and really the extent to which any of the technologies that could be brought to bear into the future, the extent to which they would impact the overall analysis that Carl has presented to us several times. So it speaks nothing to policy, but rather as to implications on the other resources that we're bringing forward through the analysis.
Thank you. I just answered, but I think just that we wouldn't want to see proliferation of anything that was counter to the climate law, and I wouldn't want us to analyze the proliferation of anything that was counter to the climate law or current direction of policy. Certainly not the proliferation of.
Yeah, it's certainly.
I guess I'll say that.
I certainly agree with you as to the principles which are consistent with the climate law. Maybe there's some aspect of these resources that you're thinking of that I'm not, though.
Just hoping that the analysis shouldn't project things that I'll guess say go beyond where our scenarios project them to be. How about that? Just looking to take care in terms of how that's pushed out, because there's a lot of support for bad, polluting, and environmental and climate unjust policies in the IRA.
Okay, thanks for that. And I think we have exhausted the questions both virtually and in Albany, and I don't see New York going off of mute. So I think we can turn to the next slide, please, and with our last topic for the day, the feedback on the topic of climate justice. And climate justice is the Climate Justice Advisor for the Climate Action Council. Samir Ranade is here to provide some feedback. Samir?
Good afternoon, everybody. It's really great to see everybody in person and virtually. So I'm excited to share with you the remaining themes from the public comments on the climate justice chapter. Could you go to the next slide, please? So I'll first elaborate on the 4 general topics of public comments that were relevant to climate justice, highlight some of what was not covered in the prior sector chapter presentations, and then go into the proposed updates on the next slide. First, let me provide some context. Every public comment that in some fashion called for addressing injustices that result in disproportionate climate and pollution burdens, or called for incorporating equity in clean energy and climate resilience policies and programs were labeled as climate justice. Equity was defined in terms of both access to relevant commodities and services and opportunities to participate in decision-making processes. Once labeled, the climate justice comments were further analyzed for how and where in the scoping plan they could be addressed. Most of them called for policy responses that were better suited for inclusion in the sectoral chapters, so they were provided to the appropriate teams to address. And as we discussed at prior Climate Action Council meetings, staff are updating the climate justice chapter around the barriers and opportunities report, which includes a general directive to every state entity to incorporate its themes and recommendations into their implementation activities and to conduct a self-assessment and barriers analysis that builds on the report's findings to allow for a deeper insight on the inner workings of each state entity. So the first topic reflects the collection of comments that urged the state to adopt a more clear an intentional effort to simultaneously achieve an adequate and equitable statewide standard of human health and well-being and economic prosperity in its air quality and energy work, and to not only avoid creating new disproportionate pollution burdens, but to address existing ones. Some of the relevant actions commenters suggested, including setting a timeline to close fossil fuel power plants, ban the combustion of non-fossil fuels where they adversely contribute to cumulative environmental burdens, aggressively move to weatherize homes of low to moderate income households, rapidly expand mass transit to make it accessible statewide, and adopt the full spectrum of regulatory and investment strategies to address the sources of disproportionate pollution burdens, such as health and carbon-based regulations for trucking facilities, vehicles, and fuels, and incentives for electrification. And lastly, the comments called for making clean energy affordable, accessible, and available to everyone. These comments have been addressed in past presentations, which mainly included the electricity, transportation, and buildings chapters, as well as through the alternative fuels subgroup. Moving on to number 2, many comments called for stronger language on justice and inclusion in the green jobs that are being created by the Climate Act. Generally, the goal of commenters was to ensure that job and related workforce development opportunities are widely accessible to historically marginalized communities that have been excluded from these types of emerging opportunities. That the new jobs created are accompanied with strong labor standards, and that traditional energy workers receive adequate income and benefits protections and support to find new work as part of the transition. The response to these comments were addressed in the Just Transition chapter, which was presented to the council at the September 29 meeting. Moving to item number 3, we received a diverse mix of comments that all touched on the theme of avoiding the wasteful consumption of natural resources that can result in disproportionate environmental burdens and irreversible damages to our entire ecosystem. The main types of comments that fell in this category included both a wealth tax and an equitably designed polluter fee, both to disincentivize wasteful consumption and pay for the transition to a sustainable economy. There were also comments that called for a ban on crypto mining, the creation of local food systems, and more aggressive efforts to reduce landfill waste. These comments were addressed in previous presentations, which mainly included the agriculture and forestry and waste chapters that were presented at the September 13 meeting, and the economy-wide chapter, which was presented at the September 29 meeting, and the electricity chapter presented today. And the last item, we received a number of comments calling for New York State to demonstrate greater efforts to engage in a meaningful consultation with sovereign indigenous nations with whom it shares overlapping interests. And this included at least one specific email campaign, and also I know is a sentiment expressed by members of this council. Next slide, please. Since many of the climate justice comments were more appropriately addressed in the sector chapters, we're proposing just a couple of revisions to the climate justice chapter. Across the spectrum of all comments received, there was a need to be more explicit on why the Climate Act places a value on climate justice and how the lack of it results in lower lifespans and a lower quality of life as measured by climate risks, environmental burdens, population characteristics, and health vulnerabilities. So including this is a proposed update. It has to do with the structural disadvantages put in place by public institutions and society that the Climate Act can address by being implemented through a lens of justice and compassion. So we propose including a larger discussion in the chapter to highlight the importance of the Climate Act's focus on climate justice. Moving on to the next one. We propose updating the chapter to demonstrate the intent and ability of the state to incorporate environmental justice in its air quality and energy policy. Environmental justice includes the meaningful involvement of communities in regulatory development and energy planning processes, and the creation of an adequate, equitable, and holistically measured standard of environmental health quality across every stretch of our state that accounts for health disparities based on race, income, gender, geography, and other meaningful dimensions of injustice. This approach that will be described as multifaceted and will involve every state entity engaged in implementing the Climate Act. As one centerpiece, it will be achieved by incorporating the recommendations of the Barriers Opportunities Report to streamline the delivery of programs and make them more accessible, make decision-making processes inclusive, and allow for a more proactive and effective approach to solving problems through improved communication and resource accessibility. So the chapter would highlight a few of the many relevant initiatives that together will advance environmental and climate justice. One is DEC's Community Air Monitoring Initiative that was launched in consultation with the Climate Justice Working Group. It entails monitoring and measuring pollution levels in disadvantaged communities across the state, identifying the sources of any elevated pollution level, and then working collaboratively with impacted communities on strategies to address the burden. And these strategies will be in addition to the comprehensive air regulatory program that DEC already implements to meet air quality standards across the state. Relatedly, NYSERDA's regional clean energy hubs, which are set to launch next month, will help to address disproportionate environmental and energy burdens. They'll be established in every regional economic development council of the state and focus on making the clean energy economy inclusive through effectively promoting incentive programs and workforce and small business development opportunities. They'll engage residents and small business owners as well as pilot solutions to address local barriers to accessing clean energy solutions. And to do so effectively, each hub will build on the Barriers and Opportunities Report to do a local analysis of the barriers, and then they'll seek to address these barriers and opportunities as they serve their region. And as the hubs increase the uptake of clean energy solutions in homes, small businesses, and in the transportation sector in overburdened communities, we expect that overall pollution levels in them will decline through the decrease in fossil fuel combustion. The chapter will also describe pioneering efforts initiated by NYSERDA, like setting up the Energy Equity Stakeholder Collaborative and a Disadvantaged Community Stakeholder Services Pool, both of which will increase the meaningful involvement of underserved and overburdened communities in the design and administration of energy programs, and will include compensation. And these efforts are in alignment with the three main themes of the Barriers and Opportunities Report that are geared towards reducing barriers to clean energy access. So the update would demonstrate how such efforts will be focused on making progress towards holistically achieving clean air in every local jurisdiction, and also provide examples of broader efforts that will ensure reductions are achieved across the entire energy system and in disadvantaged communities in particular, such as sectoral clean energy regulations and clean energy incentives, and Executive Order 22, which Governor Hochul issued last month to require state agencies to improve the sustainability of their operations and to prioritize mitigating their operational impact in disadvantaged communities. Another example of an initiative that's proposed to be included is on the Extreme Heat Action Plan, because it is community-driven and is a part of a holistic effort to improve the quality of life. Lastly, the chapter would include a statement clearly stating the intent of state agencies and authorities leading implementation of the scope and plans related rulemakings, planning efforts, and investment strategies to engage in meaningful government-to-government consultation with sovereign indigenous leadership in accordance with established consultation processes informed by agency policies. Meaningful engagement is essential to the advancement of climate justice, as state actions done in co-equal partnership with each nation can help mitigate climate and environmental burdens. Thank you, and I'll turn it back to the co-chairs.
I'll just note that Adriana Espinoza is also on, Deputy Commissioner for Equity and Justice. If she has anything to add or field any questions on that, we will Anna Kettle Tucky as well, Director of our EJ office in the room as well. Any questions for them or Samir?
Yeah, this is Gary Ginsberg. I direct the Center for Environmental Health at DOH, representing Commissioner Bassett. And I thought I heard, perhaps it was in passing, the terms of aggressively weatherizing homes in disadvantaged communities, which sounds like a great, maybe I misheard that, but sounded like something that was the community wanted. And I didn't hear a response in this document how that might be addressed, if at all. But you know, we certainly look at upgrading the housing stock in disadvantaged communities, and doing so with an eye towards weatherization is great, but we have to think a little more holistically about it, because you can be trapping mold or other toxins in the indoor environment. So upgrading the housing stock would be a more holistic approach rather than just a sole focus on weatherization, if that's what I heard. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't think I heard you completely at the beginning, but if you're talking about a holistic approach to weatherization that also addresses the health burdens that exist in the homes along with the energy burdens, that's very much the intent and a part. That was something that was mentioned actually in the Barriers Opportunities Report. And as all of our state entities collaborate more, like things like that will definitely be incorporated into the efforts. And so, you know, we can definitely make sure that that's highlighted to the proper effect in the chapter.
Any other questions in the room, or New York City?
I'll take a shot. So one, I want to highlight that was one of the most energetic presentations I've heard. I could feel the passion from your voice. So thank you for really bringing the energy to this topic, the community protection part of what we're doing. And I hear it in items covered. I see it in the projection of this information, and I'm excited to see where this is going. I want to build off the question that was asked a little bit and put a finer point on it in terms of weatherization and where it's needed most, and ask, is there any connection with HUD in any way, given their presence in affordable housing? Is there any way to work with them more closely, more effectively to bring about the weatherization needs that we've identified? That's one. And second, just thinking through the air monitoring, to me, it sounds we're going to identify particular communities, focus the air monitoring measures on those communities. Is there any thought to mobile air monitoring on particular travel conduits, high vehicle, high person travel routes, and identifying opportunities for improvement in those areas? Just thinking through, there are parts of Brooklyn with relatively low population, but lots of traffic, and understanding how that is feeding into this as well, I think would be helpful if that could be part of that solution overall as well.
So on your first off, thank you. And so on the question on HUD, off the top of my head, I'm not, I don't know exactly where the program connections are, but I don't imagine why we couldn't partner with them to more effectively implement a program and streamline initiatives, not just state and local, but it's federal and state. So let me look into that and get back to you. On the second question with regards to air monitoring, mobile air monitoring is a part of the effort. So that's definitely there. I don't know if anybody from DEC wants to add to that. But
Adriana, do you want to take that?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Adriana Espinosa, Deputy Commissioner for Equity and Justice at DEC. So I think that was Chair Christian that had the question. So we have a mobile air monitoring effort that is live now in 10 disadvantaged communities across the state. One of them is Brooklyn, and so we identified neighborhoods that based on our DAC criteria had the highest air pollution burden, and that's going to be a year-long study, mobile air monitoring study to understand air quality issues there. I do believe there are a lot of heavily trafficked corridors that are included in that study area, but we can get you a map so that you can see specifically where we'll be. So we'll be studying that for a year, and then after that, working with the communities on proposed mitigations.
Got you. Thank you for that. I just think back in some of my past work in programs to clean up the heating fuels used in buildings in New York. And I remember as the fuel got cleaner, the one area that wasn't really improving were the roadways. So just wanted to, I appreciate that you guys are taking the initiative in doing that. And I think that will lead to some very positive impacts as we continue this work. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else in New York City? We're online.
Yes, another question in New York. I just wanted to flag the excellent back and forth in terms of, looking at the roadways, what opportunities, even sort of outside of looking at the community level. If you're doing the monitoring, you can look at that. Because I know, like, for instance, in my community, 95, many communities, like I-95 is such a big issue. Anyway, just want to say that. I'm very encouraged by a lot of the additions that you said. In particular, I certainly would support this idea of a environmental health metric that is sort of tracked, and I'm hearing like enforced, over time, leveraging things like community air monitoring and other aspects of data. Could you, I support that idea. I support it with as much granularity as possible, with as much enforcement and interagency cooperation as possible. Could you speak to the granularity and what you're, in terms of adding to the chapter, what you're seeking to do?
Yeah, so you're specifically asking about like kind of metrics?
Metric. You mentioned this sort of an environmental health.
Yeah.
Across the state.
So we're working on, part of it relates to the benefits framework that is under development and will be articulated in the chapter. And we're working with the Climate Justice Working Group on that. But that also kind of has to do with the benefits of clean energy. And part of what I was also just talking about, as you know, with a cumulative impacts analysis, a holistic way to measure it is you multiply all of these different indicators together. So that's just more of the disadvantaged communities criteria effort. But I'd say the more narrower effort, like the more focused effort, will be part of it will include the benefits framework, which let's talk later too, so as we like update that language correctly. And then if there's more air, like there may be more specific air metrics that I'm not aware of, which if anybody from DC wants to also add to that.
Adriana, Lana, Jared? Okay. Any other questions in New York City?
Just, I think it's excellent to be thinking about how can we understand, environmental justice, a big piece of that is cumulative impact. And there are other states and jurisdictions that are trying to, pull together that research agenda and just sort of working to, how we can put the pieces together and use the data we have to create robust metrics, and then actually looking at what's actually happening to folks, with regards to environmental health, and how can we improve it and enforce that? I think that's fantastic, and it sounds like the direction we're going, and I hope to see it some granularity in the plan and amendment.
Yeah, I look forward to working with you on that. I know I might have already mentioned this, but we're working with the Climate Justice Working Group partly on developing that benefits framework, which I think largely relates to what you're saying, but let's make sure that what you're looking for is in
really
there.
mentioned, because I know the Climate Justice Working Group and the disadvantaged communities criteria and this plan are kind of going, on two tracks, but to the extent that I heard you discussing it in the context of our plan amendment in our climate justice chapter, I think I did. That's great, and I'd like to see it with as much granularity as possible. And you can even explain that, this is the data This is the data, research agenda that we're doing.
Great, okay, yep.
Sorry.
Sorry, just chiming in. This is Adriana again. I was working on getting Rory a map of the air monitoring effort, so I maybe missed a question, but I think it was about making sure that we're speaking about environmental health in with granularity in the climate justice chapter. Did I just want to make sure I didn't miss an open question to me?
Yep, yeah, I mean, she was, yeah, just asking, you know, how we're going to go about collecting data and assessing our efforts to, you know, holistically achieve air quality. Like what types of data are we going to what are the metrics for that?
And what will be included in our plan, this plan.
Hi, Paul Shepson here. So Raya made a brief comment about what's going on in other states. And, you know, to me, one of the impacts of the Climate Act is inspiration for others. I think it's wonderful that New York State is a leader in many ways. It's important for us to be aware that for air quality metrics that influence human respiratory health, the emissions that impact some of the pollutants, ozone and particulate matter in particular, the emissions that are important are hours upwind. So for some air quality components that impact disadvantaged communities, it really matters what happens in Philadelphia and New Jersey and other communities on the other side of the Hudson River. So to the extent that we're thinking about co-benefits of the Climate Act, one of them should be that we're working with other states to encourage them to follow our lead and to act in partnership.
Thank you.
Anything else in New York City? We've got Peter here, unless we have done online. Dennis? Yeah, okay. Dennis, go ahead.
Thanks, Basil. Yeah, two things. I know that our focus on the Climate Act is greenhouse gas, co-pollutants, but you know, I'm wondering, you know, have you also, as part of climate justice, aligned with brownfield initiatives that are out there? I mean, we're a Rust Belt state, and you know, brownfields are a real challenge in our state. So just monitoring for greenhouse gases of that nature and not resolving these type of challenges in our communities, you know, and if we do combine them with what we're doing on the Climate Act side, we increase the probability that we have clean sites to attract green energy jobs to our communities. So the first question is, are we aligned with brownfield remediation type programs, and do we see that as a benefit? Then the second is that you mentioned the benefit framework. I'm wondering when that update will come to the council, and I'm hopeful that that assessment is more than a spending plan, but how the spending plan equates to benefits, which makes it more of an investment plan. So do I have?
Yeah, those are great questions.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, I could just answer.
Go ahead, man. You're good.
Just in part, I can answer. There's definitely a connection between like our Build Ready program and the brownfield remediation efforts. And that is something that has been on my radar. So if you have more specific ideas on how we can draw that link together, then let's definitely talk. It is a part of a holistic to, you know, improve the quality of life. Commissioner, go ahead.
No, thanks, Samir. That's a great answer. And just to get back to the disadvantaged communities criteria that we had used in draft form and are now using now. Adriana or Lana can weigh in on that, but we very much took into account one of the criteria, local pollution burdens being faced by communities. So there is a pretty clear link already between the disadvantaged as well as brownfields, and of course that then fits into our opportunities moving forward, being guided by the 35 to 40% number, right, where those opportunities are for using all the tools at our disposal, especially when it comes to remediation. But anything to add, Adriana, Lana?
I just want to add that I believe proximity to brownfields is included as part of that criteria as well.
And I'll just add the Department of State has been accelerating the amount of designated brownfields through the Brownfield Opportunity Area Program. We've been ramping up and are continuing to do so to make sure that those sites are getting remediated and being eligible for DEC's cleanup programs, and then also turning them into potential green sites or other things that are in alignment with what the community wants to see there.
Great, that fits very well with everything we're doing. Thanks, Dennis. Peter.
Yeah, so, hi, Peter Arwanowitz. If my comment, these aren't related to the chapter, but I wanted to just pose some questions about where we're going with the Climate Justice Working Group. So if we still have more stuff to do in the chapter, I can pause or I can ask them now.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So the Climate Justice Working Group, as I understand it, met last Thursday. When do we expect we'll be able to get their feedback on the economy-wide chapter? In the working group, we definitely recommended that we needed that input, and I just don't know if this has been calendared. The schedule we have says that we're going to get red lines on that chapter on the 14th, and we're meeting on it as a council on the 21st.
Yeah. Eddie, can you provide any?
Sure. So yes, Climate Justice Working Group met on the 20th. We did have some folks who are interested in providing comments and reviewing the chapter. We have a survey out right now to make sure that we can get a time and date that works for staff and Climate Justice Working Group members. They have until close of business on Thursday to get back to me. And once we have those dates and times, we will make sure that we have that meeting set up.
And are we going to get a briefing from them directly then, like we've had with other chapters in the past? It's been a while, but.
Peter, I think what we envision is inviting the members of the economy-wide subgroup to participate in that conversation when we have that conversation. And then we can sort of collectively report back to the council, when we present the draft chapter to the council in November.
Okay. So when the Climate Justice Working Group meeting is set, the work group will get informed of that and hopefully participate.
Yeah.
And then we'll have a little bit more discussion in the meeting on November 21st about where they are on these issues.
Yeah, the input they provided and how that is being addressed in the chapter.
Okay, that's good. Are they going to see the red line in this sort of space, or are they going to be working off the draft?
What we envision doing is showing them the same presentation we provided to the council about the economy-wide chapter and the direction we're going and the two options that were evaluated, and get their input in response to that.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful. The second thing I have is I understand that the Climate Justice Working Group was informed last week at the meeting that the finalization of the disadvantaged communities map is now going to be like April. Do I have that correct? And if that's correct, are we sort of thinking about how we synthesize and harmonize sort of our work here in the scoping plan with those maps not going final until that time period?
So what we discussed at the meeting was a draft timeline for how we could potentially proceed to make sure that everyone has enough time to fully review the disadvantaged communities criteria, fully analyze suggestions and comments, and to make sure that we have enough time to put together a full and complete report that would go out. And the goal was to make sure that this was completed before first quarter. That was just a suggestion, just a draft. We did have some feedback from members of the Climate Justice Working Group that they would like to try to compress that a little bit and get that done a bit sooner. So we are going to be looking at that timeline again, making suggestions to see how we can finish up earlier than April. That was just sort of a suggestion to make sure that by first quarter, at the very least, that was a hard deadline. So there are obviously opportunities to compress meetings, make them longer, have more additional meetings, but the goal is to make sure that by first quarter at the latest, that there is a finalized map and a finalized report for everyone to review.
Great, thanks. That's helpful clarification. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Peter. Seeing no other questions in the room, Lori?
I believe if we turn to the next slide, thank you, Samir, by the way, and to the whole DC team for pitching in. Thank you. If we turn to the next slide, yes, Sarah is going to close us out with our next steps.
Thanks, Doreen. Just for the record, this is Sarah Osgood. So we've now, if you go to the next slide, please. We've now covered all the topical feedback that was received on the draft scoping plan. And so the next step from here, as Peter alluded to, is to circulate red lines of the proposed edits for council consideration. In order to manage the volume of this work for the council, we're planning on circulating red lines by chapter. So we have 3 to 4 chapters at a time circulated with rolling review cycles with the council through the month of November. As I've previously mentioned at these meetings, we'll use the public meetings in November on the 7th and the 21st to review and discuss the red lines, of those draft chapters based on direction from the council at the meetings and on the subgroups and the discussion of public feedback. So essentially what we're attempting to do is to cover 7 to 8 chapters per meeting in November. At those discussions, staff would capture feedback on the proposed edits and then provide a second round of revisions. This we're aiming for, this would be a full document and would be provided in advance of the December 5th meeting. Then we could use the meeting on December 5th to reach final resolution on any outstanding items. We could also discuss the process for non-consensus items, and then that leads us up to December 19th, being able to vote on the scoping plan, and if members are interested in providing statements regarding their participation or their vote to explain that, that we could have that there as well. So we're, definitely acknowledge this is a very fast-paced effort here, and the recent several meetings covering all of the feedback, we want to make sure that the council does have sufficient time to review the red lines prior to discussing them publicly. And so you can see at the bottom of the slide here, we've got a schedule for when we're planning on sending the chapters to the council members. I would say, since we only have, since the November meetings only amount to 6 hours of public meeting time, we're trying to be as efficient as possible in organizing the topics for discussion. So what we're proposing is that we could have some small group feedback sessions with council members. We could have the staff that were involved in proposing and drafting some of these edits also present. They could answer any questions that council members had about those edits, but more importantly, I think we'd be looking for council members to share their feedback on where are areas that we really need to prioritize for discussion at the November meetings. So this would be, we're thinking of this as similar to the process that we used last year for the initial text of the scoping plan. The intention of doing it this way is really to try to make the process easier in terms of collecting feedback, at least initially verbally. And then we could post recordings of those sessions to the Climate Act website for transparency. But we welcome council members' thoughts on this proposal. And I'd be happy to take any questions that council members might have. Bob?
Thank you, Sarah. I fully understand the timeline. It's tight and the need to be efficient here. But these small group discussions are not deliberative, right?
That's correct.
We're just saying what our issues might be.
Yes,
And if a council member were not to participate in those, we wouldn't be under a handicap when we come to the public meeting to raise something, presumably.
That's so mostly correct, I would say. I think what we're trying to do is understand, if a lot of the council members have concerns over a particular area, that's probably an area that we want to discuss, right? And we're trying to just prioritize the discussion items. So I would say, in all likelihood, a certain member wouldn't necessarily, there'd be other members that might be participating that could reflect, probably some similar feedback, right? We're really trying to understand what the key topics are. And then at the public meetings in November, we summarize kind of what we'd heard from council members, what the questions were, so that everybody's on a level playing field. But kind of the caveat there, I would say, is depending on the participation, I would say it's possible that something might not get necessarily teed up for discussion at the November meetings. We would want that to happen, though. So if there's another mechanism, if council members want to reach out, directly to me to provide kind of, these are my top issues that I think we need to talk about, happy to do it that way too. Basically, we're just trying to, if we're trying to cover 7 or 8 chapters within 3 hours, how do we best get through all of that?
No, I think it's a reasonable process. I appreciate also that you said that this could be posted later for transparency. I strongly favor that. I also would favor having them live streamed in the interest of transparency. I understand that we're not under any obligation under the open meetings law to do so, but I think it would be good practice for us to do so. So I urge that we consider that.
Are there questions in New York City?
Yeah, I was very encouraged to hear that that the sessions will be recorded and put on the Climate Act website. I'm very encouraged to hear that. And certainly I'm going to endeavor to make as many of these meetings as I possibly can. Maybe a bit echoing Bob's point of we'll just try and stay in communication in terms of, what we may or may not miss. I guess I do have a question in terms of, I don't know how to put this, but is it fair to say that, sort of say if there are items that have been fully litigated, say, in the gas transition subgroup regarding like certain words and language that, this is, that there are certain things that have been decided? Or, is everything on the table once again?
I guess, just from my perspective, I would hope that we wouldn't use the time to try to relitigate things that had been settled, but I think everything is probably fair game, and it kind of comes down to what does the council want to discuss, and perhaps that's, it might come down to the co-chairs needing to help make the decision on prioritization of topics.
All right, fair enough. So
yeah, I think that's a
try to participate in as many of them as possible, as many as I can.
I agree with your assessment. These meetings, they're going to help us be more succinct in the meetings in which we're all attending, which is going to be critical given the timeline that we have. And it looks like Dennis, you might have a question as well.
Thanks, Sarah. Sarah, maybe I missed it along the way, an update, and it was mentioned a little earlier about this benefits framework. With up to 40% of the spend going to disadvantaged communities, will we get an update in terms of what is meant by benefits in terms of the metrics related to the spend? Is that part of it, or has that already been established and I missed it?
I don't know that that has been established yet, but I don't know that that's necessarily, I think it's under development, but I don't know that it's necessarily ripe for the council to consider. But I would love to phone a friend if anybody has more information on that.
Yeah, I mean, look,
Yes, because would
that's
that,
gonna be
would that
a bigger.
degree
long-
of spend? Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I'm interested simply because of the amount of spend that is integral to the approval or our viewpoints on the scoping plan itself. It's not a side issue. That's why I was wondering.
Yeah. So Dennis, Adriana maybe can weigh in here, but Alana left the room. That is something that the Climate Justice Working Group is working on, and we would expect, whether it's before the end of the year, perhaps after, that there would be a really robust discussion of those metrics and how we're going to track it, what the metrics are going to be, obviously across a range of potential funding schemes. So much more to come on that. Okay.
And by the way, the broader reporting frameworks that are necessary, you know, in all respects.
Right.
So I think it will integrate within the.
Oh, Peter's.
Hi there, Peter Iwanowitz. I just want to second Bob's recommendation that we endeavor to have full transparency and maybe have these open or live stream these small work groups. I've always been a proponent of that throughout this whole climate process. And if that's something that is infeasible, then it'd be great to have the videos posted, you know, in advance of us discussing these topics at the CAC. So hopefully not posted 20 minutes, some point in advance so people have a little bit of a sense of the deliberations that have gone on the markups before the meeting on the 7th or the 21st.
Okay, we'll consider that. Thanks, Peter.
Donna? So just a question about, in general, Sarah, the comments. Is there anything more that will be done with the public comments? Are they actually going to be posted? I mean, I
Yes.
know they've been summarized, but I've had a lot of questions. I think others may have as well.
Yes.
Are we considering them thoroughly enough, for instance?
So I think we've done our best to be as thorough as we can with the public comments. We've shared the access to the comments in their raw form with the council members as well, and I've encouraged, you know, you all to take a look at them and raise any issues that you feel that we might have missed. We are in the process of for lack of a better term, cleaning up the comments to kind of remove any personal identifying information and get it posted to the website. So we are looking to get all the comments posted as soon as possible. I acknowledge the delay in getting them up. It's been a bit of a whirlwind effort, having a 6-month comment period kind of scrunches a little bit of the time that we have to kind of process all of them, but we are doing our best and intend to get those posted shortly.
And I do know how much effort you all have been putting towards this, so I do appreciate that I had to raise this. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, seeing we have exhausted the comments and the agenda, I will conclude the meeting. We will be in touch as to the location for our meeting for the 7th. Again, you can plan the capital region as you're planning your travels, but looking forward to seeing you then and discussions in between.
More. Thank you all.
Thank you.